Okay, good morning, everyone. My name is Sara Gravelli. I work at CSC in Finland, and I'm also part of the EOSC Association Board of Directors, and I'm the coordinator for the EOSC Finnish Forum. So thank you very much for joining this webinar today. I mean, this is nowadays a traditional webinar that we have every year at the start of the year to present the main achievements of EOSC for the previous year and also the plans for the upcoming year. If we look at today's agenda, so I will start with an overview of what happened in EOSC last year and what are the plans for 2025. And then we have a special guest that probably has not arrived yet because we were in another webinar, right, 2 minutes earlier. So I guess Peter will join us later on. Let's see when the other webinar was still running. So I assume there is a little bit of delay, but it doesn't really matter at the moment because I can start with my presentation and then we will see what time Peter arrives. Okay, please, so the webinar is going to be recorded. You will also have slides afterwards. If you have any questions, you can use the chat or raise your hand. Okay, let's get started then with the EOSC main achievement. Okay, if we look back at 2024, I think there are some major achievements for EOSC. Let's start with the ones at European level. The European level, we could say that EOSC has become a key enabler of digital transformation in the research area. And I have a couple of slides to guide you through the policy landscape where EOSC is operating and what happened last year. EOSC has become more tangible because last year there was the launch of the build-up phase of the EOSC Federation, and I will try to explain what it means and where we are with that and what will happen next year. The EOSC Association has consolidated its role in EOSC as the voice of the community, and I will also explain a bit what is the role of the EOSC Association in the current context and what has been achieved in the past year. At national level, so last year we started discussing about the contribution of Finland to the EOSC Federation. And I can report back a bit of where we are with those discussions and what are the plans for next year. EOSC on the policy agenda. So as you probably know, I mean, this was already known last year. So EOSC is priority number 1 for the European research area policy agenda, where EOSC is conceived as the open enabler for the open sharing of knowledge and reuse of research outputs. And almost all the countries in Europe sign up to this priority action, including Finland. EOSC is also in the radar of the European strategy for data as the basis for a science, research, and innovation data space. And this concept of EOSC as a data space has consolidated in 2024 even more. Also because of this other report from ATER, where EOSC is defined as a key enabler of the digitalization of research infrastructures while delivering the European data space for research data. And this report highlights the potential of EOSC to become the most generally used infrastructure in Europe. Last but not least, there was also a report from the former Prime Italian Minister, Enrico Letta, where in his reflections on how the digital single market in Europe should remain competitive, is advocating for the creation of a European knowledge commons. And if you look at the definition of this European knowledge commons, it's a digital platform providing access to publicly funded research, datasets, and educational resources. Because this report was so relevant, the EOSC Association wrote a reflection paper, and you can find the link on the slide to access the paper, In this reflection paper, we have tried to elaborate how EOSC is pivotal for the European competitiveness. So if you read the report, you will read why EOSC can strengthen the European digital and data sovereignty, how EOSC can advance open science, especially to foster trust, equity, and inclusivity in research. EOSC can play a role in the new security and trust landscape, and also EOSC can contribute to improve Europeans' position, reducing the cost associated with non-fair research data, but also minimizing duplication of efforts and also in funding or facilitating economies of scale. Last but not least, EOSC can also contribute to the new artificial intelligence landscape that is defining worldwide. So I really encourage you to read this report. And it has been clear in 2024 that the need for EOSC has become more critical than ever. So consolidation of EOSC in the policy agenda for 2024. If we continue and we now look at the EOSC Federation, so 2024 was the year of the launch of the EOSC Federation. There are some guiding principles for the EOSC Federation. And the first of all, what is the vision for the EOSC Federation? So to set up a system for researchers in Europe to store, share, process, analyze, and reuse within and across the disciplines and borders fair research outputs. And by fair research outputs, we mean research data, publications, and software. The EOSC Federation is a system of systems, so distributed infrastructure, inclusive. It's on a voluntary basis, so different contributors can join the federation, and also a safe and trusted environment. And clearly, there is the component of the community-driven process. To build a distributed system, we need distributed elements, and in the EOSC Federation context, these are called nodes. And the EOSC nodes are the entry points for the end users in the federation. Organization can either build a node to contribute to the federation, but also they can provide resources. So it's not necessary to contribute to the EOSC Federation to build your own node. You can also contribute with data, with services, by onboarding them in one of the existing nodes. The other peculiarity of the node is that the node is composed of fair datasets and or services. So even there, the definition is still very flexible. There are the minimum requirements that have been agreed in 2024. So these requirements, and you have the link in the slide. So these are not, let's say, the final requirements for the nodes, but it's a starting point because we are building together this federation. So there is a minimum set to be tested and maybe further evolved in the future. If we look back at what happened in concrete terms last year, then, so in spring, there was this drafting of the minimum requirements of the nodes. Then in summer 2024, the EOSC governance issued a questionnaire asking European organizations if they were interested to contribute to the federation. And more than 100 responses have been received, and I will say something about that in a while. After that questionnaire, autumn saw the launch of the first node of the EOSC Federation, what we call the EOSC EU Node. And in the winter, because so many applications for contributors to the federation have been received, a sort of selection process has started to reduce the number. Why to reduce the number? Because it's impossible to deal with all the 100 requests for contribution at the same time. So we need to start with a smaller number of contributors. I mentioned that in autumn, there was the first launch of the first node. I'm not gonna spend too much time about this because we have Peter that will gonna guide us through that in the next presentation. But just to say that this is the first node that is at the moment in the EOSC Federation. And one of the main purposes of this node is also to act as blueprint for other nodes, so that the other nodes can be inspired from this EU node. And that's why this node, in addition to some services for end users, it also provides federating capabilities that the other nodes can leverage on. And that's all I'm going to say for this, because then we have Peter that will give us more information. One node doesn't make the federation, so that's why the EOS governance launched that questionnaire. I mentioned earlier that more than 100 applications have been received, including organizations willing to build up a node or also providing services through the node. And one important thing that I wanted to highlight here is that why such an interest? So what is the added value to contribute to the federation? Well, one aspect is the increased visibility for researchers and also increase the reach of these resources, collaboration, interoperability, support for open science and fair principle, maybe access to broader resources and expertise, and also influence policy and standardization, and also some economic benefits. So these were the drivers for the organizations who replied to this questionnaire. I mentioned that 120 applications were received. The number goes down to 50 when it comes to applications for nodes. So not everyone that completed the questionnaire said, I want to build up a node, because others said, I just want maybe to contribute with my data or with my services. So in the end, the pool of nodes was like 50, still too many to start piloting and prototyping the federation. That's why the EOSC tripartite set up a process to reduce the number to reach a number of 29 potential candidate nodes. And I put here on the slide who are these candidate nodes, also to show you the diversity. So there are nodes that we commonly call thematic nodes that you see reflect more scientific domains. We have also infrastructure nodes, like, for example, the UDAT, Pan-European Infrastructure, or nodes with a more national scope or mandate. And there you see that I've highlighted that we have submitted an application for Finland. So CSC submitted an application to this questionnaire on behalf of Finland. So this is not going to be a CSC node, institutional node, but we discussed this in the EOSC Finnish forum with the Ministry of Education and Culture and the Research Council and also the university that are part of the coordinating committee. And we decided, well, that it would be interesting to pilot or to explore a potential node for Finland. Where are we now? So currently the EOSC tripartite is having dialogues with those 29 candidate nodes in order to identify, let's say, the first wave of nodes, and a reasonable number to start with is roughly 10, 12 nodes to start. So the results will be known at the end of February. So that's about the federation. The EOSC Association also had a key role in 2024, especially with the federation, because the association represented the community in the EOSC tripartite discussion, but also guided the effort of on the EOSC Federation Handbook. So we need to put in writing what are the rules of participation in the federation, what is the architecture, what is the governance, and there is a draft available. Also, in this case, this draft is not the final draft. So when you look at it, if you don't find all the answers to your questions or all the details, it's totally normal, because the idea was to start with the draft. Now this draft, when we will have the candidate nodes in 2025, they will be testing also the initial ideas in the handbook and further refine it. So it's going to be an iterative process to finalize this handbook. In addition to that, the EOSC Association also gathered the results of the 13 task forces and launched 4 new ones. So on fair metrics and digital objects, technical and semantic interoperability, long-term data retention, and health data. Remember that the task forces are open to anyone. So if you're interested in one of those topics, you can always join. So just contact the EOSC Association. And finally, the association also facilitated consultation, so bringing the input of the community in several consultations, like the multi-annual roadmap for the work program 26-27 and through the EOSC symposium. Just some extra information because there have been some changes also in the EOSC Association leadership. There were elections for the board of directors because you know that every 3 years some directors end their mandates. This year there were 4 positions open because there was still the vacancy from Sarah Jones. And the good news is that I've been re-elected for another mandate of 3 years. So that's good news for us in Finland. And then we have a new colleague from CERN, Kamran Naim, a new colleague from KU Leuven, Roxanne Winks, both with a mandate of 3 years. And then Licia Florio from Nordunet for a mandate of 1 year. So that's the vacancy from Sarah Jones. Another important piece of information, Bob Jones, that was one of the directors in the EOSC Association, he already completed 2 terms at the EOSC Association, so he couldn't reapply as a director, but he will remain engaged in the work of the EOSC Association with this title of a special envoy, and especially Bob will be following and steering the work on the EOSC Federation. If we look at EOSC in Finland in 2024, so I mentioned that we started discussing initial ideas on the EOSC node for Finland. So in particular, we started this discussion at the very beginning of 2024, where with the EOSC steering board members of the Nordic countries, remember these are the representatives from the ministry in the member states, engage in EOSC. So we started to have regular meetings to discuss with our representatives from Finland, together with Denmark, Norway, and Sweden, how to approach the EOSC Federation. And we also organized a workshop on the EOSC Federation, engaging mandated organizations, but also key national stakeholders, including also representatives of research infrastructures nodes in the Nordic countries. And we started discussing what would be our approach. For example, we also discussed a Nordic approach or a national approach. And in the end, the conclusion, also having consulted other countries outside the Nordic, was that, okay, maybe we should start approaching this at national level and see, but keeping open the option in the future to discuss eventually economies of scales or synergies with the other Nordic countries in the Nordic context. And that's why in July, we submitted an application for the questionnaire for a node for Finland. And CSC, you have seen, is on the list of the 29 potential candidate nodes. And now we are going through this dialogue. A very, let's say, high-level idea of our concept of node for Finland. So, of course, it could be an entry point for national data resources. And there we mention the FAIR-data.fi and the research.fi that are already some sort of national aggregators. But that won't be all, because we want to complement that with thematic research data resources and services. So there is an example there, like Chipster as a software for genomic data. But the idea is to then open a dialogue with all the thematic research infrastructures in Finland and see how we can work together in this endeavor. Training will also be an obvious part of the Finnish node. We have already in Finland a research data management competence center. So the idea is to understand how this can complement the offering of the node. And then also we ask ourselves the question, what about the costly or restricted resources? So that's something that it's up for discussion. It won't be like the first thing that we will be doing for the Finnish node. Also there, I want to highlight that we want to find good synergies with the EuroHPC. So Finland is very active in the EuroHPC, so we need to make sure that the EOSC node works in synergy with the EuroHPC, and not only after the latest developments, also with the LumiAI factory. The LumiAI factory will have a strong national component. We really want to build like a hub for all these initiatives working in synergies with each other. If we look at 2025, then what to expect? So when it comes to the EOSC Federation, 2025 will be the year of the first prototype of the federation. So in March, let's say, we will know which is the first set of nodes. And what you can expect by the end of next year is that we have a federation prototype in place, several nodes enrolled, a first operational governance organizational structure, an application process to become an EOSC node in place, maybe policies and interoperability framework version 1, and also some demonstration of cross-node utilization of resources. And if the EOSC node in Finland will be selected, we will be using the EOSC Finnish Forum as engagement instrument for the national level. These, let's say 10, 12, whatever nodes that will be selected won't be the only one. So the enrollment process doesn't stop there. There is already idea to engage other nodes in order to grow the federation. What to expect in 2025 from the user perspective. So there will be a federation in place. So users will be able to access resources offered to the federation, search and find resources through a common catalog, use an EOSC virtual research environment, maybe access high-value, fair, machine-actionable research datasets, and also to be continuously engaged in improving and feedback the federation. All these activities of the federation will be continued to be supported from activities at policy level. So the EOSC tripartite governance will continue to position EOSC in the research area and also in the new framework program. This is one of the reasons why also the next EOSC symposium in 2025 is going to be in Brussels in November. And also this year, there will be a new version of the SRIA, the Strategic Research and Innovation Agenda of EOSC, because the current version that we have is quite outdated. And now that there is a lot of progress and acceleration with the federation, we need to update that and also reflect on the new priorities. Finally, my last slide is some news at community level for next year. So a new set of infra-EOSC calls for proposal will open in May 2025, and the deadline is going to be September. And I just put here that if from January, there are new projects starting as a result of the last round of infra-EOSC call. And you see that there are 4 Finnish organizations that are engaged in those projects. And this is all from my side. As usual, quite a lot of information, but don't worry, you will have the slides and you can go back to them. So now I want to give the floor to the next speaker, Peter Szegedi, Policy Officer in the High Performance Computing and Application Unit at DG CNECT. And Peter, you're gonna enlighten us. Yes, we can hear you. We don't see you. I don't know.
Yes, I have no rights to share my video, apparently.
Okay.
If somebody can give me, I would appreciate that.
Sarah or Anu, can you try?
Sorry, now should be on. Please try again.
Let me see if I can. Can you see me now?
Yes,
very good.
Perfect.
Thank you so much. So the next challenge would be to share my slides, right?
Yeah, that should be easier. In my case, it was easier.
Well, let me see if you see the right screen in front of you. Is it full screen to you?
Yes.
Very good. So you don't see me anymore, or you still see me on the slide, I guess?
Yeah, we see you and also the slides.
Thank you so much. So welcome, everyone. This is my first time speaking to this audience as such. Thank you, Sarah, for facilitating this. Indeed, I work for the European Commission, DG CNECT C1. Our new mandate is HPC and applications. It used to be the Open Science and Research Infrastructures Unit, but not anymore. A lot of those things are shifting towards our DG RTD colleagues. So EOSC as a policy file is jointly managed by DG RTD, the Research and Innovation folks, and DG CNECT, who we are responsible for digital technology, right? So in our portfolio, there is also the Euro HPC joint undertaking, which you should know very well. The AI factories recently came into the portfolio, facilitating AI model development in Europe in the sovereign way. Quantum and some cloud aspects are still around. So it's a very interesting unit, and I think it's a good location for EOSC as a technology platform. So I believe Sarah gave you all the background around open science policy and how EOSC became an interesting or important pillar for the open science policy, which is on the DG RTD side of the fence. We have new commissioners, of course, on board, right? For both for research and innovation, and a new commissioner for DG CNECT. The Finnish commissioner, apparently, Hanna Virkkunen. She's our new commissioner, so we are looking forward to work with her closely on how we continue our efforts and shaping the policy for Europe. As I said, EOSC is partially in Connect as far as the technology platform concerns, because EOSC is obviously a whole process to mainstream open science principles and policies and practices actually on fair, findable, accessible, interoperable and reusable data services applications in the EOSC ecosystem. In order to do it, we need a piece of infrastructure, right? Nothing of the node creation and the federation is greenfield. We are very much aware of existing research infrastructures, existing collaborations inside countries, in regions, especially in the Nordics, and all the space that we are going into. What we're trying to achieve is to reorganize a little bit the research data space, if you wish, in order to get clearer and better access for researchers to open data, to open services. Not only open, right? Fair doesn't necessarily mean everything is open, right? It could be closed as well, but we have to make sure that the information about those data sources are shared and there is a proper access control to it. So those who have the credentials and the mandate to access those resources, think about the health data space or any health-related data, can do it. And of course, we also have to work with secure compute environments or secure research environments for those type of data. So there's a lot to do in that space. Not everything is necessarily open, but it's important to have a right access control and the wide information sharing across the federation about resources. That's what we're trying to facilitate. So Sarah talked a lot about the federation in general. In order to kickstart the federation, you need certain elements that you want to federate, and that's what we call nodes in our case. So we have to talk about EOSC nodes. Other data spaces talk about hubs. Other data spaces call them aggregators. Yet another data spaces again call them nodes or something similar. So there are different concepts for the same thing, basically, right? You have to have a gravitational point that brings users, data, services, use cases, applications together. It could be thematic, organized around a certain research discipline. It could be national in terms of thinking about your national resources and how a country should organize the research data and access in their own territories. It could be anything, a mix of those, right? We do not necessarily define what we mean by national, thematic, regional, these kind of things. It will be organic. So the nodes will have the freedom to define themselves, but we certainly will have certain guidelines how we believe a node should look like. We do have an example, if you wish, and that's what we call the EOSC EU Node. So the Commission stepped in and procured a particular deployment and implementation of a node. That's what we call the EOSC EU Node. It acts as a reference, and it also acts as a starting point to create the federation, right? Last October at the symposium, we launched the EOSC EU Node into production. It's a full node architecture, meaning that it has its own resources, it has its own applications, infrastructure layer, portal, AI, access solution, everything. It's a full stack, right? It's a full stack deployment of an example node. You can take it, you can play with it, you can try to access it. It offers certain features which might be new to everyone or relatively new to the research community, especially if you dealt with academic research infrastructures or national research infrastructures or any academic services. We don't do any excellence-based choices, right? We don't have a committee who, read your proposal and decide whether or not you can have access to anything. We try to do it more like in the public cloud. We try to automate a lot of things, including authentication, authorization, and accounting altogether. So once you log in via your EduGain IDPs. And if you release the necessary attributes from your home institution, so we will know whether you're a student, you're an employee, you're a teaching staff, or you're a researcher. Once we know that, based on that information coming from your IDPs, identity providers, so we can put you in a certain policy group. And in those policy groups, you will get credits, virtual credits that you can use or spend across the applications and infrastructure that you can access to. So this is kind of like a relatively new approach, mostly borrowed from public clouds, but we believe it would be interesting to experiment with such a thing. And actually, you can do it already today if you manage to log into the node and find your access levels there, at least as a first step. We, of course, on the right-hand side, you see a bunch of service logos. Basically, we built up the EOSC EU Node from managed services. So more like an integration project. It was not a new deployment project in any ways. We just bought bits and pieces of existing services and we built them together into a node, which you can actually see on the next slide, not this one. This slide actually shows you the various policy groups at the bottom. We have either you can have view-only access, you can have 100 credits and some access to application services. Those are file sync and share, Jupyter notebooks, and large file sending applications. So already you can experiment with a small Jupyter notebook in that policy group. And if you're a researcher, meaning that we know your faculty attribute from the home IDP, then you have access to everything, which we procured in tier 1, which is all the application services and infrastructure services. You have 3 different types of VM virtual machine environments that you can start off. You can deploy containerized applications if you want. You can combine them with the existing application services that we have. So that's roughly what the EOSC EU Node offers as a horizontal capability, right? There is no data in the EOSC EU Node. We do not host any data there at the moment. If you want to do your experiment with data, of course, you have to ingest the data. So you have to have an endpoint. You have to find your data source in Zenodo or any of our other catalogs. You might find it, or any original data source. And then you have to have the necessary APIs and tools to push your data into your environment in the node. You can experiment and you leave, right? So it's pretty much transactional, like HPC at the moment. But of course, we're thinking about developing this further and bringing more repositories on board, and actually thinking about use cases where we eventually will host some high-value data sets right into the node, so you can come to the node and check those data sets there. We're not at that stage at the moment. It's pretty much a data-wise an empty node, but service and application-wise and capabilities, core capabilities-wise, it's quite complete. So it creates a good starting point for future deployments. The interesting thing in tier 2, what you can see empty at the moment, so those are typical services that we may want to onboard from third-party providers. I think Sarah already talked about onboarding. That's a kind of flavor or scenario we're thinking about, is collaborating with others. So if you have any application or service which you want to bring to EOSC via the EOSC EU Node as a new channel to market, if you wish, you can onboard that piece of service or application to the EU Node, and users can access via the node to the same service that you probably provide access to from your national perspective as well. Obviously, it will mean new users to you. It will mean broader visibility to you, and it will mean potential synergies between similar services available out there. A few things about the current usage of the node. So we went into operation last October. All the growth is organic. We don't go out and we don't promote, we don't push people, we don't make campaigns so far. So all the growth that you can see here is purely from the knowledge of the EOS community and these kind of workshops. We have about 2,000 users, presumably by now registered, which is kind of nothing compared to what we planned for. In terms of virtual credits, we already distributed almost 350,000 across individual people and projects. They are slowly burning, right? So again, It's a question how much people just want to see it and feel it, and how much they're actually doing something with it, which we also have to step up. And interesting things on the policy groups: 50%, more than 50%, half of the people who log in will have at least some credits and some actual usage other than visibility to do something with the Jupyter Notebook, or do something with file sync and share, upload the data and see how that can be shared across or something, right? Only 17.9% at the moment, I calculated last month, fall by default into the researcher category based on their home attribute, which is not that much. Actually, we're trying to address more. We're aware of the difficulties with the National Access Federation operators and how the local IDPs are assigning faculty attributes to researchers. We're trying to pick that up via the operational groups and the national federations to make sure that we have a solution for each and every country. I don't know if you have any problems with that in Finland. I know there are problems in Sweden, for instance. So you have to have a PhD in order to get a faculty. I think it's kind of like a policy of the federation. So a lot of PhD students not ready for not having a PhD cannot sort of automatically get in. In other countries, again, policy things. Some countries you have to be a teaching staff to get faculty. So a lot of researchers who are not engaged with teaching activities will not get the faculty attribute. Therefore, again, problematic for them to come in. We have to find solutions country by country for those cases. But in general, I must say that the system works. It's fully automated, no human intervention. You come in with a certain policy thing. You engage with our help desk if you need to elevate. That's what I can offer you right now. So if you want more credits, you have a nice use case, come and ask the help desk. If you have an interesting use case, we can elevate your policy group. But the ultimate solution is that all national federations are aware of the usage and sort of facilitate the local IDPs to assign the right attributes reliably, right? So they have to check whether you're really a researcher or not, right? Okay, so on the next slide, I wanted to show this upfront a little bit. This just only highlights the fact how international the actual EOSC EU Node is in terms of the underlying providers. So as I said, we procured and we deployed the EU Node as managed services, which are offered by multiple providers in multiple countries. You see the logos there. From the Nordics, NordUnet and CNECT, we have the large file transfer service, for instance, right, as a horizontal service offered to the EOSC EU Node. You can engage with the same operator, or you can run your own service where you're building up your node. It's completely up to the node how they're building up their internal structure and services. This was our choice, right? It's quite some, right? I mean, we would have appreciated a more consolidated solution, of course, because it comes operations and deployment and everything on top of this. So you can imagine the complexity. Obviously, in the national settings, maybe you have an easier case. You maybe have a handful of providers who you want to integrate in the first place, but that is necessary. I mean, it is possible, right? If nothing else, we proved the fact that it's possible to do, even with such a complexity, to have one operational service which is coherent out there. Ignore the node candidates for the moment. This is just for illustration. Could very well be a Finnish node at some point, as we are also talking to the Finnish representatives in the official dialogue process. Operational wise, I think Sarah already mentioned the handbook. I believe there is a handbook built up by the community, basically, right? It's pretty much bottom up activity coordinated by the EOSC Association. So that handbook should be there to guide the new nodes and anyone trying to participate in EOSC about what it is and how it look like and how it should operate. On this slide, I actually only highlight some of the operational requirements which are important if you want to federate with the EOSC EU Node, because we run a production service. It's a commission service. The Commission logo is on it. Therefore, we have a bunch of criterias, compliances, and requirements towards our operators. They have to be professional. They have to support things 24/7, and they have to follow a standard framework, which is ITIL based. We picked FITSM as a particular implementation where we have 16 processes, if I remember, all mandatory for the operators. So we have an incident response, security incident response team. We have configuration management. We have documentation management. We have stakeholder management. Look it up in the FITSM framework. We're okay with a simplified version of that, right? So you don't have a full-blown ITIL v4 solution, but that's the language we speak, right? So if you want to federate and come to the EOSC EU node, either onboarding a service or federating with your own node, you have to speak the ITIL language, right? It's important. Okay, so yeah, this diagram illustrates how two nodes can interact. So on the left-hand side, we have the EU node. Again, I said you can onboard a service, just like all of the services that we procured are currently onboarded to the user dashboard, to the identity management engine, to the catalog service, to the metadata knowledge graph. So all the core capabilities that we offer, our procured services are onboarded, but we take any third parties, right? So if you want to bring your service directly to the node, it can be done, right? You have to respect our policies. You have to respect our technical choices, but your service can be listed there, and we can bring it to the users. The other option, of course, is that you have your own node, and that's the whole objective of the exercise, right? So you create something similar as we done at the European level, but you do it at the national level. You're closer to your community, you're closer to your end user, you're closer to your providers, you're closer to your data. That's the whole point, right? You make the decision where it should be, close to those who matter, right? And that's why we facilitate to create the nodes all over, and we try to federate them together, interconnect them together, and that would open up a lot of opportunities across the nodes to exchange services, to build scientific workflows that go from one node to another and coming to a third one and coming back without asking the user to jump any of the nodes or go anywhere, right? The idea is the user who logs into your finish node will stay on the finish node all the way. And in the background, you can incorporate other services, other data, other sources from other nodes, all for the benefit of the user. So the user don't have to jump and log in again 100 times to different things and thinking about how to access data here and there. You as a node, you do it for them, right? In the background. And that's what we try to facilitate or try out in the first place. And for that reason, the EOSC EU node supports certain things. I don't think I'm going to go into the technical details here. The whole message of this side is that the core capabilities, the identity federation, the metadata knowledge graph, which actually makes findability and accessibility, the first two letters of FAIR, right? Findability and accessibility. That's our catalog knowledge graph and the AI solution. That's done by the EOSC EU node. When it comes further, interoperability and reusability, that's where we have to experiment together, right? To be completely fair across the board. And that's where orchestrations come into place, so you can put an application and run it on EOSC, depending on which node serves you better for that particular application, or where, for instance, the data sits. Of course, in some cases, you want to run the application close to the data. In other cases, you just want to replicate part of the data and bring it to your environment because you're more familiar or more resourceful in that environment. So those kind of cases can also be facilitated, and of course help desk and service management across the nodes, monitoring, accounting. It's all interesting. So we offer these services to the EU node, right? Obviously, if you have your node, we expect you to offer similar services to your node. But the interesting thing is that you can also try our services core capabilities as a service. So yeah, you can use our access solution if you wish when you onboard a service to our node. We encourage you to do so. So it would be interesting to try out. And of course, all these capabilities, especially the access federation and the catalogs at the moment are capable of federating, meaning that exchanging metadata in the backend. So it doesn't really matter from which gateway or from which node the user access EOSC. They will all be known as the same user, have same credentials, same access, same virtual credits maybe in any of the nodes. So it doesn't matter where the user go. It's like a seamless experience from a user point of view. That would be the overall objective. Obviously, we will only get there step by step. And that's why we do the candidate notes and the discussion with the candidate notes right now. We will go with that discussion over summer. And the idea is that by the symposium, the next EOS symposium in November, we will reach a point where we have at least a handful of nodes. I would not comment. Don't quote me on the number, right? There will be few nodes other than the EOSC EU node, which will then declare themselves into a federation in one way or another. It could be a very lightweight, only on the access level. It could be deeper on any application level. It's a matter of conversation and discussion with the candidates, how deep we can actually get to the federation, but at least a lightweight federation working, so which would give a blueprint and an example for any others who want to come later, right? So the idea is that we do it in waves. Not everyone can or will make it in the first wave, but it's totally normal. It's not a competition as such. We just have to see who's capable of what. And then of course, when we set out all the policies and blueprints, standards that we recommend, deployment choices that we recommend, then of course we can talk more broadly to others to see how they wish to adopt this. So that would be the process. So that was my last slide. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you very much, Peter, for this comprehensive presentation. So now I invite everyone to leverage on the fact that we have Peter with us today to ask questions, right? So I've seen that there was a comment in the chat acknowledging the issue that you mentioned about the faculty attributes. And there was a remark so that this was something that in the past was overlooked, and this to remark how important is semantic interoperability in the future to make sure that these faculty attributes work. Then there were a couple of questions in the chat. One, and maybe you might have an answer even, Peter, to this one, because you have a past as Géant in the Géant community. Someone is asking if that is saying that the EOSC node looks like further development of the up to university technology stack, which I think it's a sort of a digital environment, learning environment. Is that correct? Do you have these insights, Peter?
So I was the one who initiated up to you.
Okay.
Apparently, when I was sitting in Géant, you're right, Sarah. You may remember that time. So I can tell you this: in EOSC, there is a large portion of the policy which is about skills and trainings. Okay, we have to train. We have to make sure that at the university levels in the standard curricula there is an update or an upgrade which builds certain skills for people, data stewards, we often mention them. That could be anybody who understands data, right? That kind of knowledge needs to be there at the node level and definitely and the institutional levels as well. Dealing with data management plans, helping researchers where to find data, where you have to have a plan when you start your research. What's going to happen with my data? Otherwise, all will be lost, right? It's not just you publish your presentation where you're obliged to be in a public repository with your paper, right? And the data attached. But what happens to all the other data which is not attached to your paper and not necessary, right? It was part of your research, workflow, but you haven't published it in the end because they were irrelevant. There might still be value in that data for other researchers, so they don't have to repeat that, right? So there's a lot of data there. Therefore, you need skills, you need trainings, how to deal with these, how to manage these. Up to You was a platform for education, targeting higher education institutes for making sort of education or skills for students better fit for university. I think that was the whole idea there. When it comes to training platform, we as the EU node would be happy to take such a federated training platform into consideration. At the moment, we don't have any, right? We do have a little training service where we try to publish very practical trainings related to the EOSC EU Node itself, right? It's part of the contract that any service provider of ours needs to have a little training of the service published there so people can start, seeing it. But that's all, right? We don't deal with any larger or broader aspects of training, so skills development. I think it's essential. We would be happy to bring it to the node, creating a training platform federation and all kinds of open science training environments. There's an offer, I guess, from one country to offer a special help desk for those kind of open training developers. So it's an interesting element. I can see a synergy between an Up to You like educational platform and a node platform as such.
Okay, thank you. And there is a very, I would say, a related question to that one, always about training, right? So if you can elaborate a bit, what are the plans on, is there going to be any material available for the EU Node? You mentioned that there is some basic training under development. When maybe we will see the full set of material, and also what is the vision of training for the new nodes? It's mentioned also peer-to-peer support.
Yeah, it's a very good point. So we do have documentation, obviously, for the EOSC EU Node, what the architecture and the deployment choices and some operational aspects. We haven't published them yet. We're thinking about, in what package or in what format we can actually publish it. It also matters on how the early node candidates and the discussion with those candidates will go, because a lot of the choices depend on, whether or not makes sense for other nodes. So we are a little bit reluctant now to share too much about it. Definitely will be discussed with the pilot nodes, CSC part of the process, so that will be one channel. And the whole objective, I guess, of the early nodes when they're joining is to get to a proper documentation, right? Because federation needs standards to agree on, needs concrete use cases to work with, needs certain choices made. So definitely that will be documented. So how much we can actually organization-wise support the nodes, I believe there will be there are projects already thrown at it. Like there will be a new EOSC United project coming out, which will have this task on board. There is also EOSC Gravity, which is the continuation of what is the other current project? I forgot the name,
Yes,
which would support the EOSC Association and their task forces and working groups to have enough resources to do these kind of things. So support for new nodes will come, guidance for new nodes will come, policies, presumably for new nodes, will come. At the moment, we're just not there yet. We're not there yet to open the door, give you a concrete policy, and then you can come. It's not the stage at the moment. We are in the stage where we are handpicking certain candidates. We start working one-to-one, and we aim at arriving to a situation where we presumably have a common policy and some guidelines to share.
Yeah, and also remember that also the new nodes are not going to work in isolation, but they will work with their colleagues from the other nodes in our setting. We are already having conversation with the other Nordic countries, so there will be definitely peer-to-peer support coming.
That's a very good point, Sarah. Actually, I forgot to mention. Right? So at the moment, the federation has no owner. we don't know who owns the federation, right? So at the moment, whoever participates needs to respect the other participants. So it will be pretty much peer-to-peer at the beginning. Everybody respects all the others where we start building it. And then if the EOSC association steps up and there will be a sort of organization formulated around it, which can own the EOSC federation, then you have an owner, and then you know who you need to sign what paperwork or agreements to join. Otherwise, it would be not scalable, right? So with small candidates, we can do peer-to-peer, but up to a certain level, it gets unmanageable after a certain point. So you have to, I mean, the association needs to work on this thing to make a suitable organization which can be the real home and owner of a federation as such, which then can build up until that point we are co-creating and peer-to-peer.
Yeah, and indeed the association is working on that.
Yeah,
Just for your information. There is another question about credits. So if you can explain a bit if there is a possibility to have extra credits or maybe if there is a price list somewhere now or in the future.
Very good question. Yeah, so we welcome any experimentation with the credits as well, which we will do during the candidate process. At the moment, the credits are only used for access management, right? The only reason for now today for the credits is to prevent you to use all the resources once you get access, right? So you will get a certain amount of credits. Every 90 days, every 3 months, the credit will set back to default. So you will get, but you will only get a bunch. You cannot go above it. It's your responsibility to manage your credits to have enough for 90 days. So in the next 90 days will be replenished to the default, and then you can continue, right? We use it purely for resource management, right? At the moment, but in the future, of course, you can imagine some kind of a monetary or financial model thrown at it, right? Where you can purchase credits, you can gain credits by doing certain activities. We can reward you with credits, and that credits can be burned across horizontal activities. It will be the choice of the nodes whether they want to deploy the credits or not, right? So think about it if it makes sense in your national environments to any incentive system or anything where you want to use the credits. We can manage multiple wallets, so it doesn't matter if your understanding of a credit is different from our understanding of a credit. We can put you in a separate wallet, so the credits will not mix up, right? And you can use those credits for any authorization decision, any reward system, any financial purchases. Like I'm not sure if you're familiar with the OCRE framework, where you can buy public cloud services under the same framework and pre-purchase real cloud credits, monetary credits for your users. You can easily translate that into a virtual credit. You can keep it in your wallet. You can assign it to your users if you wish. So that's already a kind of commercial use of the credit. At the moment in the EOSC EU Node, there is no zero commercial meaning of the credit. It's purely for access management to resources.
Yeah. Thank you very much, Peter. So we reached the end of the hour, but if I can steal another minute from your time, I will pick the last question that it's an easy one. And the easy question is about, so there are other federation efforts ongoing, the EuroHPC Federation platform, Simple. What are the plans, or are there any plans to connect them? So let's close with
coming
this.
Together. So
yes,
indeed.
That was an easy one. Yeah.
Well, the short answer is yes. The long answer, I don't know how much time that will take. So indeed, so Connect looks after the smart middleware, which is called Simple. The idea of Simple is that will be a common middleware across all data spaces, intra data spaces and inter data spaces, right? When it comes to EOSC, we had a study last year. It's not published yet. There is a Simple workshop 2 days, in 2 days. I think it's Thursday, 30th of January. You can join remotely. The Simple providers will tell you the whole story. I think it's a full day workshop. I'm not sure how much they will say about the studies. We did a compliance study with EOSC. it's not a surprise. We figured out that we do things in a special way in academia when it comes to authentication, authorization, when it comes to catalogs, when it comes to resource sharing compared to industry. Simple is very much industry influenced, industry oriented, Gaia X, and think about the likes, right? So there are significant gaps between how Simple sees the word and how EOSC sees the word. Presumably it will not be any soon when we use Simple inside EOSC, but we can use Simple as a proxy or something to translate to when we talk to other data spaces. So my intention would be to try and foster that pathway to use Simple as inter data space, between data spaces, to try and tap into industrial data sources and spaces via Simple, if they adopt it, of course, right? So the whole adaptation process is ahead of us. We don't know who's going to adopt it yet, but EOSC will definitely not be the first one who will adopt Simple inside. That's what I can say. So when it comes to quickly HPC federations, yes, the idea is there. All these HPC data centers and AI factories, they're growing out from the research world, which again has a particular way to operate. We have a bunch of SMEs and industry partners out there who need access to HPC and all these resources. It's not obvious for them how to do it. So somewhat similar problem that we see in Simple, the mismatch between the academic research world and the industry SME world and the way how they use or do things. The HPC Federation, the objective for the HPC Federation is to create a sort of a shell around all the HPC centers and AI factories, which facilitate SMEs and industry to better engage with those resources, right? We do know that academia has not much of a problem, or research in general, accessing those. We have all these access policies in place for your HPC, but it's problematic for SMEs, right? When you typically I have this model which I want to develop, and now I have to write a whole application process and wait for waves to get access to answer. This is not how SMEs work. They put their money into Amazon HPC and run the model there, right? So, I mean, we have to create some kind of inviting environment for SMEs and industry to engage with our resources, which will turn research into innovation, which is, I think, a key for Europe to remain competitive globally, right? We have a very low rate of turning research. We do excellent, good research. We have a low rate to turning that into real innovation due to the lack of industry engagement and SMEs. And that's what the Federation should bring in. That's what Simple should facilitate. And that's how EOSC, as a data space, with all the good research data, which we valuable, curated, good quality research data, which we have here, should contribute to AI developments or any research uses HPC resources.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Peter, for your participation today. It was really, really excellent. And I mean, you shared a lot of information. You put things in the big picture. So thank you very much for having joined us. I want to thank also the participants. Thanks for having stayed with us today. So remember, main takeaway messages from this webinar. We have a EU Node in place that it's already operational. Use it, try it. If you have comments or feedback, we can bring them back to Peter and all the others working on that. There are upcoming nodes, so keep an eye on those as well. I told you that we are started working on a node for Finland. So if you want to be directly engaged or you have questions, feel free to contact me at any time. So thanks a lot, everyone, and I wish you a nice rest of the day. Thank you very much. Bye, everyone.